5,000 square feet. That's all they used to feed 6 people all year. Families are already doing it with just raised beds, a few backyard plots, and a basement that works like a personal grocery store. No tractor, no debt. So what's their secret, and how can this same plan turn a backyard into a pantry? Let's see how one plot feeds an entire family. You don't need 10 acres, you need a plan. The idea of feeding 6 people from a tiny plot sounds utopian until you look back at earlier times. During World War II, millions of Americans turned their backyards into victory gardens that supplied nearly half the nation's produce. City lots, schoolyards, and even alleyways produced beans, carrots, and squash on what by modern standards would be called impossibly small plots. This chapter begins at that intersection of necessity and strategy. Most people think that feeding a family all year would mean endless crops side by side, a tractor rumbling along, and a bank account that can cover seed, tools, and machinery. Instead, the families who quietly achieve this on roughly 5,000 square feet have a carefully planned strategy rather than an easy hobby. The trick does not lie in grand scale. It lies in intelligent design and consistent execution. Imagine a raised bed system with careful crop placement, disease-preventive spacing, and strategic succession timing. A single 1/8 acre can produce the same edible calories as a 1/4 acre conventional plot when the gardener prioritizes storage reliability and nutrients per square foot. Historical data from backyard gardeners of the 1940s show that average yields of potatoes could reach 8,000 pounds per acre under intense cultivation. For an 1/8 acre, that's about 1,000 pounds, enough to sustain a family well into winter. This is the planning mindset that turns uncertainty and unpredictability into measurable outcomes. Harvest workloads spike when crops demand constant attention. To reduce this, growers focus on crops with predictable harvest windows and storage strength. Think of crops like carrots pulled once, then stored, or beans dried on the vine without daily picking. This has a payoff most gardeners overlook because it translates to hours saved during peak season. If a family grows the right staples, then stores them with intention, January meals come from July planning. The space to feed a family is measured not in acres, but in decisions made well before seeds hit soil. This plan becomes a chronicle, a calendar of tasks and storage goals from which a pantry emerges where weeds once dominated. A plan transforms 5,000 square feet from a daunting blank canvas into a calculated series of rooms with purpose, each planting a step toward resilient food security. The next chapter takes these abstract numbers and grounds them in a garden that feels manageable. Let's talk numbers without making it miserable. You enter a 50 by 100 space with preconceived ideas about size. People frequently compare backyard gardens to small farms and conclude their soil is inadequate. That assumption melts when you think about meals rather than plants. Families consume base calories daily, often from grains, pasta, or rice. In this model, the garden supplies caloric weight through hardy crops you harvest, cure, and store as pantry items. Take potatoes. A single plant can yield 6 to 10 pounds of harvest in fertile soil with good hilling. Commercial guidebooks from agricultural extensions report yields reaching 300 to 400 hundredweight per acre under optimized conditions. On 5,000 square feet, about 1/8 of an acre, you can plan for hundreds of pounds of tubers that carry families through winter. Sweet potatoes follow similar yield principles when soil drains well and temperatures stay warm through maturity. A reality check recognizes that gardens seldom cover every calorie. You will still buy flour, rice, and oils. These staples cost pennies per serving when purchased in bulk and complement your homegrown produce. They act like bridge beams in a house. They connect, support, and make the rest function smoothly. This number-based mindset prioritizes storage longevity. Carrots harvested at peak size can store into late winter with proper humidity management. Winter squash often lasts 6 months or longer when cured at warm temperatures and kept in cool, dry shelves. The value here is not glamour, but duration. A plot producing bright summer cherries or small ornamental pumpkins might be beautiful, yet their harvest windows close quickly and contribute little to long-term sustenance. Another measurable point concerns labor. Broccoli and cabbage offer a large weight of food from a few dozen plants with harvest routines that take hours rather than weeks. In contrast, crops that demand daily picking, like standard green beans, generate churn without proportionate weight gain. If you eat 4 to 5 pounds of potatoes per week as a family, a carefully measured plot of 1,200 to 1,600 square feet devoted to this crop anchors your year. Combine that with similar space allocations for other staples, and the entire 5,000 square feet begins to feel like a grocery store with roots and leaves. The next chapter reveals the substrate beneath all this: soil and bed systems that make numbers translate into reality. The hidden superpowers: soil and beds. In the story of any garden that sustains a family through 12 months, soil plays the role of hidden hero. Ancient farmers in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East understood that water control, soil depth, and organic matter define productivity. Without rich earth, your garden resembles desert dust, offering sporadic growth at best. With soil that holds nutrients and drains excess rain, your seeds become food factories. Early in the 20th century, research on raised beds demonstrated significant yield gains compared with flat ground plantings on identical land. Raised beds improve drainage and are warm earlier in spring. That timing allows early planting, which shifts harvest schedules so storage crops mature before cold weather arrives. When potatoes and onions go into warm beds in March, they can mature by midsummer, allowing you to cure and store crops before fall rains or early frosts constrict harvest windows. Mulch complements that advantage. Leaves, straw, and wood chips act as climate buffers. They slow evaporation, reduce soil temperature variations, and act as natural weed suppressants when applied thickly. Layer mulch over a carrot bed after thinning, and you preserve soil moisture through drying heat waves, which translates into larger vegetables that store longer and supply meals through winter. Raised beds also create clear routes for workflow. Paths wide enough to walk and reach all bed edges make daily tasks simpler. When soil stays crumbly and loose, seedlings sprout with higher uniformity because roots don't have to burst through compacted, trodden earth. That simple change alone can shift yields dramatically, even on small plots. Design matters too. Place tall crops on the northern edge so they don't cast shade on shorter neighbors. Block plant corn rather than long rows. Block planting improves pollination because wind-carried pollen reaches many plants simultaneously, and it reduces lodging when storms blow. Every mulch layer, every path width choice, and every soil amendment contributes to efficiency. You build microclimates that extend harvest windows and reduce labor spikes. These soil strategies connect directly to the next section on crop choices, because soil gives each plant what it needs to fulfill its role in the year-round plan. The staple crop list that actually lasts to spring. Arriving in winter with a full pantry depends on the crops you choose. History and data show that a handful of staples contribute most of the edible calories and nutrients a family needs over months of scarcity. Successful gardeners focus on calories per square foot and storage longevity. First, potatoes. Under moderate climates, potatoes planted in early spring mature by late summer, yielding tubers that store through winter when cured and kept in a cool, ventilated space. Many backyard reports show individual plots yielding 300 to 600 pounds of marketable tubers on just 1,200 square feet with consistent fertility and hilling practices. Sweet potatoes add diversity. Given well-drained soil and raised beds, vines convert sunlight into carbohydrate-rich tubers that carry families into late winter. Choose bush types so most tubers form at the plant base, reducing soil disturbance and simplifying harvest. Carrots act as a bridge crop. Planted in successive windows, spring and late summer, they supply fresh eating early, then stored crunch for months. Tight spacing early, followed by thinning leads to roots that store well. Carrots intended for storage perform best when harvested unwashed, then packed in slightly humid conditions that keep them crisp. Onions and garlic fill a flavor gap that transforms basic calories into satisfying meals. Garlic cloves planted in fall or early spring develop into bulbs that store dry in cool spaces. Onions heat cure into papery skins, then hang or sit on shelves through winter. About 200 to 300 square feet devoted to onions yields thousands of bulbs, enough to season meals through months when greens feel distant. Winter squash adds body. Butternut, acorn, and Hubbard varieties cure in warmth, toughening rinds and storing for long months. On 300 to 500 square feet, squash vines produce dozens of fruits that feel like autumn dinners and store until spring. Dried beans convert sunlight into protein-rich seeds. When left to mature on the vine and then rattle in pods, a few hundred square feet can produce buckets of beans that keep for years in airtight containers. Tomatoes transform into sauces and salsas that turn winter dinners into memorable meals. 15 well-maintained plants with trellising and pruning yield pounds of paste and juice that fill jars, preserving summer flavor. Adding greens, herbs, and an optional corn block fills nutritional and flavoring gaps. With this lineup and dedicated space planning, 5,000 square feet turns into a succession of harvests that carry 6 people from spring through the deep of winter. Plant in waves so harvest doesn't ruin your life. One of the fastest ways to burn out in gardening is to treat every week like an emergency. But nature doesn't rush. She works in waves. So should you. Instead of chasing dozens of tiny deadlines, think in seasons, in focused bursts, and in crops that let you rest. Wave 1 hits in early spring. This is when onions, garlic, carrots, and cool weather greens go into the ground. Broccoli and cabbage thrive in these temperatures too. If your soil warms quickly, this is also potato season. The payoff for starting early? You avoid the worst heat, pests stay minimal, and your harvests come in before everything else competes for your time. Wave 2 begins as the soil heats up. Tomatoes, peppers, corn, and squash move in next. Instead of planting a little corn each week, plant it all at once in one big block. This way, pollination improves and you get a clean harvest window. Cut, freeze, done. The same rule applies to tomatoes. Plant them with intention. Know your sauce days, your salsa weekends. Big preserving jobs sound overwhelming until you realize batching them makes the rest of the season easier. Wave 3 is for the drying plants. Dried beans are the stars here. Plant once. Let the vines do the work. When the pods rattle like maracas, you harvest all at once. You're not out there snapping beans for hours each evening. You're bagging protein on a weekend. Wave 4 is the fall reset. Once summer crops fade, slide in cool weather greens again. Add a late carrot crop. Herbs like cilantro love fall. A basic cold frame made from old windows can stretch your fresh harvests deep into winter. Even small November greens lift the mood during dark months. Here's what makes this work. Batching. One weekend becomes potato day, one day is tomato canning day. Another is for shelling beans. Work becomes visible, scheduled, and finished. This system flips the usual exhaustion script. Summer gets busy, but winter becomes peaceful. You already did the work. You're eating from past effort. And that emotional relief of being fed and done is what sustains families who garden like this year after year. Next, we move into the final piece of the food puzzle, storage. This is where your harvests stop being a pile of food and start becoming security. Storage is the difference between taste and rot. Growing food is exciting, but storage is survival. It's what turns effort into meals. And historically, this is where most families succeeded or failed. Start with curing. Potatoes fresh from the soil are soft-skinned and fragile. Let them cure for 10 to 14 days in a dark, ventilated space at 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The result is a tougher skin that keeps bacteria out and moisture in. Cured potatoes can last 5 to 8 months in cool, dark storage. Onions need hard curing too. Hang them or spread them out until the necks dry and outer skins turn papery. Keep them away from potatoes. Ethylene gas from onions shortens potato storage life. That one detail has ruined thousands of harvests. Winter squash cures differently. It needs heat first, 80 to 85 degrees for about 10 days, to harden the rind and heal small cuts. Then, it can store for up to 6 months in a dry place around 50 to 60 degrees. Without curing, squash begins to soften by Thanksgiving. With it, you're eating homegrown comfort food in March. Carrots are a different story. Don't wash them, don't trim them, bag them in plastic with minimal holes, and store them in a fridge or cold room just above freezing. High humidity keeps them crisp. Low humidity shrivels them. Done right, carrots last 4 to 6 months. For beans, the process is even simpler. After you've let them dry fully in the field or on a tarp, then thresh by shaking or whacking the pods in pillowcases. Store the clean beans in sealed buckets with oxygen absorbers. These last for years. If you've got a basement, you can make a cold room. Use foundation walls for natural coolness, insulate the rest, and add passive vents for airflow. Crates allow single-layer storage and airflow, which keeps rot at bay. Add shelves for squash, hang onions, and stack your jars of tomato sauce. Freezers help too. Broccoli, corn, berries, all freeze well. Chop, blanch, bag, label. A small chest freezer adds months of food security. Canning matters most for high-acid foods like tomatoes. Pressure canners handle beans and stews. Water baths preserve sauces and jams. Label everything with dates so rotation happens naturally. Storage makes the difference between food you grow and food you keep. And now that you've saved it, how do you make it sustainable? Make it manageable so you don't quit in August. Gardening can be more grueling in summer, but not heavy all year. That's the difference between a system and a struggle. And systems start by removing friction. First, weeds. You'll never catch up on them. What works is mulch, thick, early, and everywhere. Cover soil in straw, grass clippings, or like wood chips. Paths, beds, even rows of young onions should stay covered. Raised beds help too by making access fast and keeping roots above spring saturation. Second, crop stress. Some harvests feel like joy: potatoes, broccoli, squash. Others feel like chores. Green beans are notorious for constant picking, snapping, blanching, and freezing. The fix? Grow them every other year. Switch to drying varieties, or just grow fewer. No one gets a trophy for suffering through chores they could skip. Third, disease. Tomatoes are heartbreakers. In humid zones, they'll collapse in August unless you give them airflow, prune lower leaves, and keep water off the foliage. Space matters. Bare soil invites splash disease. Covered soil protects. And resistant varieties do exist. Just pick based on local advice, not catalog hype. Fourth, time. If you're trying to garden, store, homeschool, and do taxes in 1 week, you will break. Batch work is the secret. Plan tomato days. Block out preserving weekends, then rest. Here's a story. One family set aside the last weekend of July as salsa weekend. It became tradition. Friends helped, music played, kids labeled jars. That family never missed a year. Fifth, delegation. Kids don't need perfect skills. They need real tasks. Labeling jars, carrying crates, snapping beans, hitting dry pods with a stick. It builds responsibility, not just completing chores. And then, permission. Some days, dinner is frozen pizza. That's okay. The system works when you're fed and sane. This leads into your starting point, because trying to do it all in year one, that's a trap. The final chapter gives you the blueprint that keeps people coming back season after season. Your first year blueprint for a 50 by 100 garden. Begin with reality. A garden can feed your family, but if you try everything at once, it will bury you. Year one needs anchors, crops that make dinner easier and fill real hunger. Start with potatoes. They're forgiving, high calorie, and store well. Plant early, hill once or twice, harvest, cure, done. They make up about 1/3 of most real-world garden calories. Add onions or garlic. Their flavor turns survival food into real meals. Onions grow from sets or starts. Garlic goes in fall, both cure and store with minimal space. Add tomatoes. One plant can yield 10 to 20 pounds in good soil. 15 plants trellised and pruned can fill a shelf with jars of sauce and soup base. Plan 2 preserving weekends for them. Then, pick one from this list. Dried beans, carrots, or squash. Each store is different. Beans need drying and shelling. Carrots want humidity and no washing. Squash needs warm curing and shelf space. Now, draw zones. Place tall crops and trellises on the north side. Give potatoes the biggest space, up to 1,600 square feet. Use raised beds for sweet potatoes or carrots if drainage is poor. Onions need weeding early, then heavy mulch. Tomatoes go where you can reach them often. And here's the secret rule. Don't expand before you build storage. If your harvest has nowhere to go, it'll rot or stress you out. Crates, shelves, freezers, buckets, gather these first. Set harvest dates like holidays. One weekend becomes onion day. One becomes bean day. Label them now, shift as weather requires, but treat them like appointments to keep with your future meals. Success in year one is this. You ate from your garden in January, and it felt normal. You skipped stores for a few weeks, you looked at your pantry, and smiled. That's what a 50 by 100 garden really does. It shrinks the chaos of food insecurity into a plan you can follow. It makes next year easier because you'll know what worked. And it starts now, with a shovel, a plan, and dinner already halfway done. You've just seen how 5,000 square feet rewrites everything we thought about food and space. But the hidden lessons don't stop here. Hit play, because the next story goes even deeper.